Hello, I'm going to talk today just a short little session on using strength-based writing. So I'm going to go through kind of some things to think about, and then I'm going to give you an example. And so Kelly and I talk about this in a lot of our trainings, and so I thought it would be helpful just to get some specific examples. So thinking the underlying principles of using a strength-based approach, but also writing, is that we're assuming that all individuals have strengths and abilities, that individuals change and develop from those strengths. So when we focus on strengths, children learn quicker. The problem is the problem, the individual is not the problem. When individuals appreciate and understand their strengths, the individual is better to learn and develop. And so I think when I'm writing using more of a strength-based writing approach, I'm really I'm not discounting the fact that they're here for therapy and that they have, deficits in areas, which is probably why they're here seeing me. But I'm writing it in a way that's showing how I'm going to help them get their goals met versus just focusing on what they can't do. And so some things to consider when you are documenting using a strength-based approach, because thinking about like when you're writing, write your assessments and your SOAP notes as though anybody can read those. So if a parent's going to read your assessment or your SOAP notes, are you writing in a way that focuses on their child's strengths? If not, then we need to kind of rethink how we're documenting. And so triggers is one way to look at it. Outline the event, situation, circumstances that helps or hinders their development. So maybe you write about how much maybe they need one-on-one support to be successful in whole group. Maybe they do better when they're paired with a peer. Looking at qualifiers, so detail how often something happens. Or how much support is needed or how long. So instead of saying they can't sit during the session or they can't sit in circle time or whatever, instead say they can sit for up to 30 seconds, whatever that is. But you're writing a qualifier, so it gives you that baseline of where we're starting from. Dispositions for learning. So what are their tendencies to respond and characteristic ways to learning? So are they confident with new experiences? Are they willing to persevere? So instead of saying they won't try new things, you might say that with support and slow introduction, they will try new things. Multiple intelligence and learning styles. So how do they construct their world? How do they construct their understanding of their world? And how do they convey that to others? So do they learn through hands-on exploration? Do they learn better from music? Do they give you information more when they're moving? So what is their learning style? Strategies. So what strategies have you used or have the families used or previous providers used to enhance their learning? So visual supports, first then board, positive reinforcement. What are those types of strategies? So those are some things to consider when documenting using a strength-based approach. So now I'm going to give you an example. So let's look at Liam. And I wrote this as though, this is something that we often see in maybe the first paragraph of your assessment section of your evaluation. Okay, or this could be maybe something that you're putting in your IEP, some background information. So I wrote it as though Liam was referred to our therapy center. So Liam is a 7-year-old who was referred to our therapy center by his physician. He has a diagnosis of autism. He's nonverbal and delayed in his academics compared to those of his peers. He is not yet toilet trained and needs help feeding himself. He's a very picky eater, only eating goldfish and Cheez-Its. He prefers to be alone and has frequent challenging behavior. He receives special ed, OT, and speech at school. Okay, so this is, like I said, typically what we might read. But I think when I read this as maybe a provider who's getting Liam, or maybe as an assistant who's starting to see him, it doesn't really give me a direction on what I need to do. It tells me what he can't do, but it doesn't really give me a baseline of where to start from or what I should try, what should I have in that first session. Okay, and also as a parent, if I was reading this, I'd be like, oh my gosh, what can he do? Liam has a lot of things that he can do and enjoys, but it doesn't reflect this in this paragraph. Okay, so let's kind of go through it. I rewrote this and see what you think. So Liam is a 7-year-old boy who was referred to our therapy center by his physician. Instead of just jumping in and saying his diagnosis, I think use that kind of with caution if you need it or not. Most often the diagnosis is everywhere in the records and the reports, so thinking if I need it, especially on an IEP, you might not need it. So I chose to not use it here, but you can kind of do what you need to there. Liam enjoys video games, Legos, puzzles, and numbers. Okay, so I'm setting that stage for what he likes. He communicates to others by pulling them to what he wants or by standing close to the items he wants. So instead of saying he's nonverbal, right, I'm saying how he does communicate. So that way I know, as a therapist, when he's trying to tell me something. He currently knows how to match and identify numbers, but learning how to identify letters at school. Okay, so instead of saying he's delayed, I'm just saying this is what he can do, and this is what he's working on. He can feed himself chicken nuggets and cheese it with his fingers. His family wants to expand his limited diet to include more fruits and vegetables while also working on teaching him how to use utensils. So instead of saying he can't use utensils or he's a picky eater, I'm saying we want to expand that. Okay, he primarily eats Cheez-Its and nuggets, but we're trying to expand that. He will comply with diaper changing, but is not yet indicating when his diaper's wet. Although he spends most of his time alone, he will sit alongside a peer during a preferred activity for 1 to 2 minutes of a video game. So using that qualifier, so I'm saying it's not that he just doesn't ever be not around peers or other people. It's just this is when he is. So if I were going to work on that, I would know to start here. When he gets frustrated, he might hit or push whoever's close to him to communicate he needs a break. So I'm not saying that he doesn't have challenging behavior. I'm saying this is what his challenging behavior means. He currently receives support at school from special education, occupational, and speech therapy. So kind of thinking about the difference in those two and the fact that when I read the second one, I know for my first session with him or the assistant who's going to see him or whoever, I know I make sure I have those things that he likes, those Legos, those puzzles, those numbers. I know now, like if we're going to work on feeding, I know where to start. If we're going to work on social skills, I know where to start. Okay, so this just gives us a little better idea on what he can do to build on that versus just focusing on deficits. So thank you for joining me. I hope this helps a little bit. Check out our website for some of our upcoming trainings.